I don't know who I've become. I can't read romance anymore. Hello, new setup. I moved some things around my room so that I could actually show my bookshelf during my videos. And so, what do we think? Let me know. Anyways. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here, hi, my name is Anvita. I love to read books and I love to talk about books, and today I'm going to be talking about a lot of books that I read in January. January felt like such a long month. So much happened. I think 10 days of the month I was in India visiting family, and then like those days itself felt so long, and then besides that as well, like the times I was here, like thinking back on the number of things or events that happened this month, was it just seems like, how is it possible that all those things happened in 30 days? Like it felt like January was like 6 years long or something, I don't know. But we are in February. Yeah, we are in February. We are in the second month of 2024. We are in the second month of 2025, and hopefully I will learn to make sure to say and think that it's 2025. I literally, yesterday, I realized that like for all the things like where I was like making notes and stuff, I was writing 2024 as the date. And so hopefully in February I will finally stick with 2025, and it'll like get in my head that it's 2025 now. And yeah, anyways, I'm very excited for February. But before we start with February, I want to look back on January and all the books that I read this month and talk about them, and talk about which ones I liked, which ones I didn't like, which ones I thought were or you know, all the different kinds of feelings that come when reading a book. And so let's get started. I'm gonna give you guys statistics for January reading from Storygraph, and then we'll get into the 8 books that I read in January. Let's go. Okay, so stats. I read 8 books, like I said, in January, and that was a total of 2,391 pages. My top 3 moods were emotional, adventurous, and tense. Emotional was like the biggest. It's like 25%, as you can see, and then adventurous was even less, and then tense was even more, even lower. Actually, tense kind of isn't even like the third most. It's like there's so many that have a value of 2 here. So besides sad and dark, which was only 1 book, I guess, the rest were all technically in the top 3s. So anyways, mostly medium-paced books, mostly books that were in the 300 to 499 range. There were no books that were over 500 pages. Mostly fiction. I did read 1 nonfiction this month. So genres, the top 3 genres were young adult, romance, and mystery, which are literally like my top 3 genres. Well, except fantasy. Actually, fantasy is in my top 3 and not romance, I think, at this point. Yeah, I don't know who I've become. I can't read romance anymore. Anyways, format, most of the books were in print. 5 of the books I read were physical books, and then 3 of them were ebooks or audiobooks. And then average rating was 4.07, which is pretty good. This is only for 8 books, because one of the nonfiction that I read, I didn't rate it because it's a memoir, and I tend to not rate memoirs. And then yeah, this is what my reading looked like day to day. I was not reading a lot in the middle there, as you can see. And then I went to India for the trip, and there was plenty of time to read, and so it hiked up in those 2-3 days, like 12th and 13th, which is when I was reading a fantasy series. And then it went back down, and then now it's back up and down. Yeah. Anyways, those are the stats for January. Now let's move on to the books. So the first book that I read in January was a book that I'd started in December last year, but then hadn't finished by the time the year ended. And so I was just finishing that one up. I think I was over 50% of the book when the year started. So like I only read like 20 to 30% of the book when in January, and that book was How to Solve Your Own Murder by Perrin. This was an ebook. I got it off of Libby, and yeah, it was a murder mystery, but not like a scary vibe. Like it was more cozy vibes, but also like the name is kind of like misleading because it's not, the main character is not solving her own murder. So, you know, yeah, it is misleading, but it does have an aspect of another character who is a very prominent character throughout the book, who has spent her entire life trying to solve her own murder. And yeah, like she knew from a young age that she was going to be murdered. And so for the rest of her life, which like she found out maybe I think like when she was 16 or something, and then she died in her 70s. So the entire time she was like trying to figure out who's going to betray her, who's going to murder her, etc. And then she ended up dying. And then somebody else in her family comes and solves her murder. So it's not that she is solving her own murder. So it is misleading, but it was fun. Yeah, it was just a fun read. Nothing much to remember, I guess. Like it wasn't memorable in the sense that it wasn't my favorite mystery ever, even in like the different genres. Like it wasn't my favorite cozy mystery or my favorite like actual mystery and stuff. And yeah, it was fun for its characters and like their different like quirks and stuff, but that was pretty much it. Yeah. Anyways, next I read Love from A to Z by S.K. Ali. This was my first S.K. Ali book and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I also listened to the audiobook from Libby while I was reading the physical copy, and it made it even better. Like the audiobook is really good, so I highly recommend that, but also just highly recommend this book. I thought it was so well done and just so interesting. Also, it's set mostly in Doha, and Doha is very close to me, and I know like the kind of life and like lifestyle, I guess, in Doha. So it was nice to like read about it also because I could relate, because like the Doha lifestyle is kind of somewhat similar to the lifestyle in Dubai, which is where I live. And so reading this was nice because I could relate to a lot of it. Also, especially going to an international school like Adam goes to in, or used to go to in this book, and like international school friends and like that dynamics and like things like that was very interesting to read because I could relate a lot to it. And yeah, I just in general I thought it was really cute, and I thought both characters were really well done. I thought the representation for MS was done really well and handled really well, and yeah, it was just really good. There is a second book in the series. I think it's called Love from Mecca to Medina, and I don't think I'm going to read it, at least not anytime soon, because this ended on such a perfect note for me that I don't want to particularly change that perception or like that world in my head by reading the second book. And of course it's going to change how much I know about this world and these characters and like the things and stuff that happen, like the events and stuff that happen in this book. And yeah, so I don't know if I want to read the second book yet. I don't know if I will, but if any one of you have read it, let me know what you thought of it and whether I should read it or not, and then I'll give it a try. So yeah, I think I'm happy with where this ended, and so I might not read the second book, but if you think I should, let me know. Yeah, so this was the second book of January. And then I was not reading for that maybe a week. And then I went on the trip to India, and then I started reading a book that was for my Fable book club, and that was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I have heard about this book so much on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok, on all platforms everywhere. And so I needed to read it, and it has people who are writers as main characters. So that in itself was also another big reason why I wanted to read it. And so I ended up picking it up as my January book for my book club, and I'm so glad I did because I really enjoyed it. I flew through this. I think I read this in I started this in one evening, and I finished it the next afternoon. I think it was 2 sittings. I read all evening, and then I woke up, and first thing all day I read until I finished it. So really bingeable one. Really good. Yeah, I don't know. It's the rivals to lovers just always gets me, and that will always be one of my favorite tropes. But also in this, the rivals to lovers dissolves very quickly, and the enemies or enemies, they're not really enemies, but the rivals to lovers dissolves very quickly. And yeah, I think my favorite part about this book was the letters, of course, and the writing for the letters was just done so well. I think there was some things in this that were it felt very over explained in some parts, and so it made me, I don't know if that's because it's YA or not, because I've read other YA where the author isn't telling me what to think, and what, or making me understand every action kind of while I'm reading a book, and letting me think for myself what's going on and stuff. And so this one felt a little bit over explained to me, but that didn't take away from how much I enjoyed the book. So I still gave it a pretty high rating, and yeah, highly recommend. If you're just starting out in fantasy, or if you've been wanting to read fantasy books but haven't started yet, or don't know which book to start with, I would recommend this one. It's set in a war with gods. There's magical typewriters and magical buildings and things like that, and yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's good. You should read it. So okay, anyways, like I said, I read this one evening, and then the next day in the afternoon, and 1 hour later I immediately started the next book, which was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross, the second book in the duology. It's only a 2-book series. The story ends with this one, so highly recommend, because the book series is complete, so there's no waiting. That is also why I hadn't read this series up until now. Not up until now, but I know it came out sometime last year maybe, and so I was waiting to get my hands on both books before I started it, and then I ended up waiting even more. But yeah, look at this cover. First of all, look at this beautiful edition I have. Also, before I read the book, I thought because there's a violin here that it's gonna be some the magic system or whatever is gonna have something to do with music and stuff, and it doesn't, but it was nice to think about, and reminded me a little bit of that V. Schwab series. What's it called? Oh, it's right there. This Sabbath Song and Our Dark Duet, which is a book that has music related dystopian fantasy. So anyways, just beautiful. This says, Write me a story where there is no ending. Write to me and fill my empty spaces. This is one of the lines that is in the book, and when I read it, I was like, it was right here. Anyways, this is beautiful, and it also has artwork, I think. Yes. Okay. Anyways, let me show you guys. Do you see that? Okay. And then it says on the hardcover, despite our mundane lives, perhaps we make our own magic with words. Cute. Okay. There's also some other beautiful stuff inside. By the way, this is the Owl Crate edition. Yeah, the Owl Crate edition, exclusive edition of this book, which I got at Y'all West last year in May. It is signed. There's more artwork, like it's a continued artwork at the back from what I remember. And there's like, yeah, the ink written Tribune, and then the rest of the artwork. Yeah. Anyways, enough about the outer parts of the book. This one also I really enjoyed. I also gave this a pretty high rating, and again, this also had the same issue for me, that it did feel like I was being over explained a lot of things, but other than that, the storyline, the, you know, way it kept me hooked, and the way I binge read this, because again, I finished Divine Rivals that afternoon, and then I started this again that evening, and so I read that evening and then finished it the next afternoon. So like, again, but I read it in 2 sittings. I could not stop reading. It was that good. And yeah, highly recommend if you're starting out in fantasy, or if you're wanting to read fantasy and like try it out and see if you like it. I would recommend these books because they were really good, and yeah, it was really done well, and the ending was good and kind of what I was expecting from this. So yeah, anyways, this was book 4. Yes, this was book 4 of January. Then I read my first memoir of this year, and that was When My Ghost Sings, a memoir of stroke, recovery, and transformation by Sidhoo Fraser. This was so well done. I listened to the audiobook and also read the ebook side by side, and mostly audiobook, and it was just done so well. I think story-wise, like the way the story was weaved and the way it was written to talk about stroke and recovery was just so interesting. And like how, so the author, right, Sidhoo Fraser, she talks about, with the name of the title, When My Ghost Sings, the ghost in this book is referring to Tara before she had her stroke. So like the person she was before her stroke, the things she liked to do, and like all of those things. And it talks about, you know, her life before the stroke, and then her kind of like trying to reconnect and understand her ghost while also being her person now and being the person that she is now, and making, you know, recovering from the stroke, but also recovering to find herself who she is now as the person. And just all these like, you know, tales from the past versus present, and like, and how the stroke that led to amnesia made her forget so many of the things that happened in Ghost's life that she is like finding out through like other people from her past and stuff. And so just really well done. I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend reading it. So yeah, it was very well done. I thought the writing was great in itself, and but like the whole concept of, you know, using the ghost as, you know, the person you were before, and like, yeah, that was just really well done. And yeah, the audiobook is really good. Highly recommend it. Yeah, and it's a pretty short book, so yeah. Okay, Next, I read Han Kang's The White Book. This, again, another very tiny short book. This is like 161 pages, but even then it's like half of them like don't have like words on the left side, so it's even shorter, and it's all about the author using white things. Like the first page, she lists like a bunch of things that are white, like salt, snow, ice, moon, rice, waves, yulan, white bird, etc., etc. And in the next like the second chapter of this book, she like talks about each things and relates them to life and to grief, and like there's like more in it. There is a storyline within the book about the grief and about the mourning of things, of life and life's events, and so I would recommend reading it to find out what it's about, because it will resonate with you even more that way. And yeah, I just thought it was really well done. There were so many passages and lines that I highlighted because I really, really resonated with it. And yeah, it's just done really well. I really, really enjoyed it. So my second Han Kang book, the first one was Human Acts in 2020, I think I read it, and that is also fantastic, so I highly recommend that as well. I'm hoping to read The Vegetarian either in February or sometime this year, because yeah, I want to read more of Han Kang's works. So yeah, highly recommend. Next, I listened to an audiobook called The Mistletoe Mystery by Nita Prose. This is a novella mystery book that is in the Maid series, Molly the Maid series, and I've read the first two books, The Maid and The Mystery Guest, and I enjoyed both of those a good amount. I enjoyed the first one way more than the second, so this one I wasn't sure if I was gonna pick it up, but then it was available on Libby, and so I was like, why not? And so I did pick it up, and I read it in like, again, this was I think a 3-hour audiobook, so it was a very quick read. I read it in one sitting, and it was just really good. It was very cute, very, very predictable. Let me say that. It was very predictable. I feel like cozy mysteries sometimes have that, where it's like it is a mystery, but it's more about the characters and their, quirkiness rather than the mystery itself. So the mystery tends to be predictable, but you still enjoy it because the characters are so lovable, I guess. And so this was that kind of vibe where it was very predictable, and literally in the first like 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes before that, I guess, I knew what was going to be happening, but I still enjoyed being along for the ride and seeing it happen, I guess. And it was nice to see that happen, see the events of this book happen after having read the first two books and seeing how far the characters have come along. So I enjoyed it, yeah. And then last book that I read was yeonnam-dong's Smiley Laundromat by Kim Jiyun. This was so good. It was so warm and comforting, and I really enjoyed how all the characters in like the different chapters like come together towards the end. Like I enjoyed the community vibes of it. I enjoyed how it was just warm and comforting. Like I made a lot of annotations, but most of them were for the storyline itself and not like quotes and stuff that I'm gonna think about. But it was still just overall vibe of the book was just so warm and so comforting, and yeah, I enjoyed it. There are some, like towards the end, there are some stories or some plot points that become very dramatic, very K-drama style, but I did not mind it. I thought it was fun because I love K-drama, so having those dramatic plot points in it was not something that like took me away from the story. It was still, I just went with it. So that is there. But overall, yeah, I think for me, actually not even towards the end, there are some other stories, like even the second story, which is called A Midsummer Romance. That one was also very K-drama vibes. A lot of them were K-drama vibes, but it was fun. And I think my favorite one was probably the first story, which is why, like, at first I was reading this really slowly and I wasn't sure if I was in the mood for it or not. And then I finished the first story and I was like, okay, never mind. I'm gonna read through this, and then I finished it like very quickly because I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I think it was really good and I think it was done really well. So highly recommend again. Yeah. So that is why, I mean, most of the books pretty much that I've read this month, I would highly recommend, which is why my average rating for this month was above 4 stars. So yeah. Anyways, that was all the 8 books that I read in January. These 5, and then I read The Mistletoe Mystery on audiobook, When My Ghost Sings on audiobook and ebook, and then How to Solve Your Own Murder as ebook. So yeah. Anyways, that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your favorite book of January was, and I will see you guys next time, next Monday, 5 p.m. IST. Bye.